States Air Force. Any violence, period, I'm not for it. But that day, Piers, let's think about it. Where was the insurrection? Who had the guns? Who was violent? The FBI, Christopher Wray. We don't even know how many FBI agents, how many informants, how many people you're shooting rubber bullets in people's faces and acting as if they're not going to be upset. Okay, we saw the footage of everybody inside.
Vinny from the PBD podcast and Jacob Chansley, better known as the QAnon shaman from J6, completely own Wajahat Ali and this other dude over here. Apparently he's an officer. When it comes to January 6th on the Piers Morgan Uncensored show, let's see how Vinny and Jacob Chansley do against these loony lefties.
A really interesting debate, this. And I honestly, all of it has been fascinating to me. And to actually have one of the people who's been pardoned next to one of the police officers and reaching some points of agreement, I think is a really important thing. Vinny, what do you feel about this? The Republicans were split. Many Republicans, including J.D. Vance, did not want the ones who were violent against police officers to be pardoned. It does seem to fly in the face of what most Republicans would think, which is if you commit an act of violence against police, you should not be pardoned. What do you think?
Well, first, Piers, I want to congratulate you. Your friend finally inaugurated into the White House. He's going to stop this bleeding that's been happening with this country. I was there, Piers. I sent your producers a bunch of videos. The guy's done more in 3 days than Joe Biden has done his entire career. The moment we saw him at the Capital One Arena, he sat down and started citing executive orders and got to business. Number one. Number two, Piers, in regards to the Jan 6 and all the pardons and everything, I've met Jacob in person. What the media told us about this guy, he's a monster. He did this. I met him in person. I interviewed him. Amazing guy. Great heart. He's intellectual. He knows what he's talking about. He loves this country. Okay? And what happened on January 6th, I know Wyatt said something about free and fair election. That's what you believe. The American people don't believe that. The majority of us, 81 million votes, all the discrepancies, FBI at Twitter.
Real quick for clarification, this dude right here, this is the shaman guy, the shaman dude from January 6th.
Cheating or election interference. I think that day, in regard to Winston about January 6th, my heart goes out to him because to me, he was a victim. For Nancy Pelosi and all of them holding back 10,000 National Guard troops, all the games playing, he was a pawn in the game of destroy Donald Trump no matter what, okay?
Oh, Vinny, let me ask you though, Vinny, I mean, look, that may well be the case. That may well be the case, but it doesn't change the fact that thousands of people, as part of a large group of people, did storm the Capitol, and many of them broke in, and some of them committed acts of violence against police in the process. None of that, I mean, all of it looked appalling. I got to be, to the rest of the world, it looked like America lost its mind, right? But you know, when you look back on it now, we can debate the nuances of who should have been pardoned and so on. I do think some of the more peaceful protesters got way too big sentences, for what it's worth. I don't think they were all violent. They shouldn't be treated the same way. But I do think any violence against police officers, I'm staggered that Donald Trump has pardoned them. Honestly, I am. I wouldn't have done it if I was there. I agree with J.D. Vance's position on that.
But Piers, okay, and Piers, by the way, I was a military police in the United States Air Force. Any violence, period, I'm not for it. But that day, Piers, let's think about it. Where was the insurrection? Who had the guns? Who was violent? The FBI, Christopher Wray. We don't even know how many FBI agents, how many informants, how many people you're shooting rubber bullets in people's faces and acting as if they're not going to be upset. Okay, we saw the footage of everybody inside. Who was shooting? Who was taking over? Where was the insurrection? Where was it, Piers? Donald Trump didn't say, go in there and do all of this. A big group of people came in there. Who knows how much they were freaking
Vinny, they were all breaking the law.
It looks bad.
Vinny, they were all breaking the law.
Yes.
We have to agree that, right?
Yes. And okay, Piers, I agree. And do you think, who died that day, Piers? Who was actually, the highest crime is murder, okay? A Capitol Police, Michael Byrd, shot Ashley Babbitt and murdered her. Okay, unarmed United States Air Force veteran. What, he got pardoned as well. Okay, and yes, Piers, it looked bad, but you know what? When the system, you believe the system's cheating you, you go to the system and you protest. And when he was talking about BLM and all the riots, everybody burned down their own city. Why the hell would you do that? If you have a problem with the police department, Go to the police department. Why are you burning down black-owned businesses? Why are you burning down black-owned businesses? Why are you burning down your city? Okay, these people felt like they were cheated. And you know what? The facts have come out. They were. So they went to protest. And unless we find out with all the evidence that was destroyed, who was involved, who was in there, Antifa people dressed as Trump supporters, FBI agents inside the Capitol, unless we have all those facts, Piers, you don't know who was actually at fault and who was doing what.
Okay, I mean, what I would say about, we now know that they were cheated. Actually, we don't, because there's never been any evidence produced that that 2020 election was rigged. Donald Trump keeps saying it. I wish he wouldn't. He doesn't need to say it. He's won big now. He doesn't need to go back over that again. But actually,
I disagree on that. I don't think that we should just drop it and move on, especially since after Trump won in 2024. I disagree with that. I think we need closure on 2020 election. I think we should know once and for all if there was shenanigans in the 2020 election or not. I think there needs to be an investigation done, not only for just peace of mind for everybody, for the left and the right, and just settle the debate once and for all. But also, too, I mean, wouldn't you want to know if there were shenanigans in 2020 just so that way we can make sure it never happens again? That whatever led to these indiscrepancies or whatever, that we could fix it and so it doesn't happen in the future? Like, wouldn't you be more interested in making a more secure and tighter election process? I don't know why anybody, left or the right, would be against that. I personally want an investigation done, and honestly, I don't care if I'm wrong. If there's a proper investigation done and it is concluded without a shadow of a doubt that there was no shenanigans to sway the election, honestly, I'm fine with being wrong. If it settles this debate once and for all and it leads to more secure elections in the future, I am fine with being wrong on this. But what do you guys think about it? Do you want an investigation done no matter what the outcome is? Sound off in the comment section below. Smash that like button if you're enjoying so far. Let's continue.
Including Republican judges, nobody has ever found any concrete evidence that that election was rigged. So the reason why people... hang on, Vinny. The reason why people were protesting in the way they did was because they believed it. I certainly believe that. But the reality is it's never been backed up by actual hard evidence, even by Republican judges who've studied it. So this premise that somehow it was illegally stolen from Donald Trump the first time, I've said it to his face, and I believe it now, just as I still believe what I wrote in that column that Wajahat quoted from earlier. I just think that there are certain things where people can continue to say it was stolen and rigged and so on, but you've got to actually at some point stump up the hard evidence, and it's never happened.
May I say something, Piers?
Yeah.
Okay, so
yeah.
Hang on, Vinny. I'll come back to you. Let Wajahat respond, and then I'll come back to you.
Yeah, Piers, look, you and I have disagreements, but we have agreements. And I read that part of your column because I agree with it. Shame on Donald Trump for continuing, this is the key word, continuing to perpetuate a grotesque, inflammatory lie that threatens to imperil the very foundation of American democracy. What is that lie? That he won the 2020 election that he lost. And you and me, we've been on your show before, we've talked about it. It's time for him to move on.
Yeah, I agree.
He won 2016, he won 2024. He continues to perpetuate this lie to the point, Piers, where now 80% of Republican voters believe the lie. And some of them were incited by that lie, invited by Donald Trump. In fact, Jacob's former attorney said that Jacob was a guest of Donald Trump, that he was duped by Donald Trump, that he apologized for being there. That was Jacob's former attorney, right? These people were there. These are regular Americans.
Former attorney.
I said former attorney.
Former attorney.
Former attorney. These people were fellow Americans. These people were fellow Americans. They weren't evil. They didn't have horn on their heads. They truly thought that this election was stolen, which it wasn't. No proof has come out that it was stolen. Joe Biden won, just like Donald Trump won in 2024.
But do you accept? All right, but Wajahat, do you accept the argument?
But they were
hang on, guys.
Sorry, go ahead.
But Wajahat,
Sure.
Wajahat, do you accept? Because I do, that there was a clear double standard in the way that people who protested through the BLM months of extreme violence in many cases, trashing institutions and buildings, attacking police. I mean, a lot of people were involved in this. That there was a clear double standard in the way that they were collectively treated by the justice system and the way that the 1,500 January 6th protesters were treated. Do you accept there's been a clear double standard here?
Before we get to Wahaja, is that his name? Wahaja? Anyway, I just call him the Indian Sal Governale. Before we get to what he has to say, I just want to remind you too that those riots were started due to systemic racism, remember? And then the George Floyd, that was done out of racism. Something that was never proven. Something, and something, by the way, they did investigate. They investigated, was this done out of racism? There was no evidence. They found that it was not due out of racist intentions. But the media still continued to lie. And they manipulated everyone. They riled everybody up. And that's how you got the Summer of Love. In the election situation, people were sharing things online. People were seeing things, weird things, shady things, questionable things. Donald Trump saw that stuff. And he echoed it, and he said, hey, wait a minute, guys. There's a lot of stuff being shown around online. There's a lot of discrepancies here. Why don't we hold off on the votes and try to investigate this stuff? He didn't tell us to believe anything. He was echoing what we were seeing in our concerns. That's what he's going off of. They always try to paint it like, oh, yeah, Trump just said it, and we're like, oh, yeah, that's true, yeah. But no, man, there is a lot of questionable things in the 2020 election.
I think there's been an obscene double standard, and I'm so glad you brought it up, because if BLM members, if Black, Muslim, Indigenous Americans were to do what MAGA members did, first and foremost, we wouldn't even gotten to the Capitol because we would have been shot dead. And secondly, the fact that Donald Trump, wait for it, Donald Trump and his fans celebrate the January 6th insurrectionists, right? These are people, wait.
But why aren't you answering my question?
I will. I kept quiet when everyone
It's a bad answer. He doesn't want to answer it.
No, I am. January 6th, violent insurrectionists, MAGA members attacked Capitol Police, number one. They invaded the Capitol. They smeared shit in the Capitol. Some of them came with weapons with the intention to assassinate Mike Pence and Nancy Pelosi. And some of the violence that was done against 140.
But why aren't you answering my question?
No, hold on a second.
But you got to answer my question.
Hold on.
Yeah, Jacob, I will come to you. Jacob, I'll come to you. The moment he's answered my question, I'll come to you, Jacob.
Yeah. So no BLM protesters or Antifa protesters participated in a violent insurrection. Number one, none of them attacked the police like January 6th insurrectionists who were praised by Donald Trump. And number three, if they did
attack police. They did attack
the
police.
Right wing.
What do you
Many
mean they attack police?
BLM rioters attacked police. What are you talking about?
Did they take flagpoles and beat the police?
Sorry,
Some police died during the riots. There is this one retired officer. He was like an older guy. He was retired, but he came out of retirement to help police the situation, to help try to keep everything safe. And he died during a looting. He was murdered, unalived. I don't have the exact body count, but yes, officers did die. At least one died during the Summer of Love. The left doesn't talk about it. He was a black police officer too. So I guess only Black Lives Matter, I guess, if they're criminals in the middle of doing something criminally. But if it's a black police officer trying to do the right thing and protect his city, I guess his black life doesn't matter.
Many BLM rioters attack police. On that point, let me bring back Winston. I mean, you know more about this probably than we do, but this idea, I certainly think there's merit to it. But this idea that there was a double standard in the collective way that the BLM protesters were treated compared to the collective way January 6th protesters were treated. What do you feel about that?
Well, here's the difference. Again, I'm glad we all can at least agree that violence on law enforcement is not okay. But here's the difference. Those riots, again, I'm not condoning what happened to across any major city that experienced those in the summer of 2020. However, a city block in Minneapolis, even in downtown DC, is very different than the United States Capitol, which is our sacred hall of democracy. And this temple that, for me personally, I spent years making so many personal sacrifices in service to Congress, in service to our nation. And so the difference there is, what happens rioting on the street. Of course, that's not okay, but that is very different than attacking on a specific day when a presidential election is being certified, the actual results. Again, we have not seen any credible evidence that the election was stolen besides the president's claims that it was in 2020.
I mean, I would say to that, I would say, Winston, before I go to Jacob to respond, he wants to respond, all I would say to that is, I get your point that it happened at the Capitol, and therefore to the world watching, it was worse in a way. But in the end, violence is violence is violence. And statistically, there was a lot more violence collectively over the period of these BLM riots through that long, hot, very...
And also the left, there was a double standard because the left minimalized what was going on. Like it was like a whole joke when there was like the newscast where the guy was reporting and there's like burning buildings behind him. And he goes, some of these protests, they're fiery, but they're mostly peaceful. So they would try to downplay any of the violence going on. They would try to downplay it. They call it the summer of love. Oh, well, what's going... They have a right to protest. This is peaceful protests. Oh, this is the language of the unheard. They would excuse it and they would downplay it. But when it was January 6th, it was the opposite. They condemned it and they literally compared it to 9/11. So yeah, there clearly was a double standard.
On January the 6th. And
there wasn't, Piers.
Well, there was.
No,
there was. A lot more people.
Yes, it was.
Well, a lot more people died.
Yes,
for one.
it was. It went on for months.
A lot more people died. A lot more police officers were attacked. Right? I mean, every statistic would suggest that there was a lot more violence over a longer, sustained period of time. And all I would say, Winston, is in the end, violence is violence is violence, particularly against police officers. More police were attacked over that summer.
When you have violence with a political goal, that's the definition of terrorism. So that's
what was happening in 2020, dude.
So Winston, are you saying
that?
But again,
so Winston, would you categorize? Hang on, Jacob, I will come to you. So Winston, would you categorize what happened on January 6th as an act of terrorism?
Well, I mean, certainly by some, yes. And I think, what the challenge here is in this conversation, the summer of 2020 has been so lumped in with this general thing. We can't talk about what happened that summer because each city was different. Each experience of each officer was different. And so to sort of lump it all in together isn't really factual. It's not fair to actually the facts. And again, I respect all those law enforcement officers who were injured that summer and who continue to serve. Same with Capitol Police too. But we cannot lump in riots that happened in Minneapolis versus other cities and then sort of compare, and then use that to justify what happened on January 6th. That's
okay. Jacob, your response to that?
Yes. Okay, first of all, the media lied. What we saw with January 6th was a massive, massive politically motivated psyop that was based on a politically motivated setup. All right, all with fingerprints of regime change, all with the hallmarks of regime change here. Now, look, when the media said that this was the worst attack on the Capitol in our nation's history, they were wrong because the Weather Underground literally bombed the Capitol. That's the left. Oh, and by the way, the guy Bill Ayers that was a part of the Weather Underground, the bombing of the Capitol, he was pardoned by Obama and later actually got involved with the Department of Education in the Obama administration. There's also the time that, a bunch of Puerto Ricans actually shot congressmen inside the Capitol. I believe that was also a leftist cause as well. So what has happened and what we've seen with this J6 narrative is that the media has pushed this insurrection narrative over and over again. They've used trigger words and trigger images to create an instinctual and an emotional response in the subconscious mind, telling people their country and their democracy is under threat. And they made people like me their psyop poster boy, which was a very large mistake because the fact of the matter is nothing that they said about me on January 6th was true. They had the audacity to say that I call myself the QAnon shaman, for God's sake. None of that's true. So like every bit of the narrative of J6 is a lie. They told us that police officers died. That's not true. They knew it wasn't true. They avoided the fact of talking about the fact that actually 4 protesters died on that day, not just Ashley Babbitt, but Rosalind Boyland and 2 others, many of which were victims of police brutality. Okay, they didn't talk about the cover-up with Yogananda Pittman or Tom Manger when he came in. This thing stinks to high heaven. And anybody that can't see that it stinks and how it involves like nefarious agents within our own government or 51 intelligence agents or something, you got another thing coming.
Jacob, what were you at?
I mean, well said by Jacob Chansley, who was the shaman from the day that was worse than 9/11 or just as bad as 9/11, January 6th. Completely well said. We all know there is a complete bias in how when right-wingers do something, it's treated as horribly. When the left does something, there's a million excuses for it. Excuses, millions of justifications, or just straight up downplaying what's going on. It's clear that there's a clear bias, you know. I think it's dying down now that Trump's back in office, and wokeism and DEI stuff, all this Looney Tunes things that we've had to live under for the past 8 or 10 years or so is finally exiting out the door. You know, there's still work to do, but at least we're finally getting done with all of this wackiness and looniness and gaslighting and authoritarianism that has been done by the left and the Democrats. The only people that deny that there's a bias here are the freaking loony left. It's quite simple. Great job here by Vinny and Jacob Chansley. But what did you guys think about this clip? Sound off in the comment section below. Subscribe to my channel. If you enjoy content like this, you'll be really helping me out a lot. And if you do enjoy content like this, if you like seeing more Piers Morgan stuff where he hosts these panels, I got more videos for you on my channel. Click away and enjoy.